Seraphine Voss stood at the edge of the great hall and did not move. Around her, 500 wolves were silent, not the polite silence of ceremony, the heavy kind, the kind that settles into a room when something is about to happen that cannot be undone. Cain Ashveil stood at the center of the hall. He was tall, dark-haired, broad-shouldered in the way that made younger wolves step aside without being asked. He held the old script in his hands. His expression was the same expression he wore when he signed treaties and gave battlefield orders. Calm, decided, finished with doubt. He read the words aloud. Every syllable landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. When it was over, the Luna mark on Seraphine's wrist faded. Not dramatically, not with fire or sound. It simply went quiet, the way a candle goes out when the air changes. Elder Mara, who had served 3 Alpha Kings and outlived 2 of them, looked at the floor. Seraphine looked at Cain. He did not look back. She walked out of the great hall in her own shoes, wearing her own clothes, carrying nothing that belonged to the pack. She reached the tree line before her legs stopped working properly. She sat down against a pine tree and put her hands over her face. She cried once. A long, quiet, thorough cry that nobody saw. Then she stood up, wiped her face on her sleeve, and kept walking. That Cain moved efficiently. That was the thing about him. He was always efficient with decisions, always clean about execution, always 3 steps into the next plan before the current one had finished landing. He selected Isolde Crane within 6 weeks. She was the daughter of the Eastern Alliance. Smart, poised, politically valuable in the way that Cain had always believed a Luna should be. A partner in strategy, an asset, not a complication. The bonding ceremony was scheduled. The great hall was prepared. The elders assembled with the old rope, the old words, the old fire. The pack did not come forward to witness. Not loudly. There was no speech, no declaration, no act of rebellion that Cain could point to and punish. The senior wolves simply stepped back, one by one, and looked at the ground. The warriors found things to study in the middle distance. 3 elder women walked out of the hall without a word, moving slowly, the way people move when they want it known they are choosing to leave. Isolde stood at the altar with her hands folded and her face composed. She was too dignified to show what that moment cost her. Cain rescheduled. It happened again, and again after that. Pack law was older than any Alpha King, and it was clear on this point. A Luna bond that the collective refused to witness could not hold. A Luna without the pack's recognition was a title, nothing more. Cain was stuck. Cain, who had never been stuck. Who had governed Veyrath for 11 years without a single decision that came back to bite him, was completely and entirely stuck. He began to notice things he had not tracked before. The hunting parties were returning light, not because of bad luck. The wolves were distracted, pulling in different directions, making small errors in coordination that added up to empty hands. The pack healer sent him a report about stress fractures in the communal bond network, a spiritual term that Cain had always found imprecise and now found uncomfortably specific. 2 maternal females had stopped nursing properly. Their pups were thin and restless. He summoned Elder Mara. She sat across from him in the council room and let him explain everything he was observing, and then she said, very quietly, "She was the warmth at the center, Cain. You put out the fire. Now you are surprised that the house is cold." He had no answer. He did not sleep well that night, though he told no one. Seraphine had not disappeared. That was perhaps the most inconvenient thing about her, from Cain's perspective. She had simply gone somewhere he had not thought to look. Veyrath's Edge was a border settlement. Rogues, half-bonded wolves, packless strays, people who had fallen through the cracks of every official territory. Alpha Kings did not concern themselves with Veyrath's Edge, because Alpha Kings generally did not believe that anyone there mattered. Seraphine had built a clinic in a converted storage barn. She ran it at night, mostly, because injured strays tended to arrive after dark. She had negotiated a supply agreement with a human herb merchant named Petra, who asked no questions and gave good prices. She had, somehow, talked 2 rogue factions out of a Cold War that had been running for 11 years, mostly by sitting them both down in the same room and making them eat soup together until they ran out of reasons to be angry. She did not talk about Veyrath. She did not talk about Cain. She did not discuss the bond, or the ceremony, or the mark that was no longer on her wrist. At 3 in the morning, when the clinic was quiet and the last patient had gone, she sometimes put her hand over the place where the mark used to be and sat very still. Then she went back to work. He came himself. No guard, no emissary, no formal declaration. Just Cain Ashveil on a horse that was slightly too well bred for the mud roads of Veyrath's edge, riding into the settlement on a gray afternoon, when the clouds were low and the air smelled like rain. Seraphine saw him from the clinic doorway. She went back inside and kept working. He tied his horse at the post near the well and waited. The rain started 40 minutes later. He stood in it. He did not leave. She was aware of this the entire time. She was aware of it the way you are aware of a sound that keeps going in another room, persistently, unavoidably, taking up space in your attention, no matter how hard you focus on something else. After 3 hours, she walked outside. She looked at him the way a person looks at a problem they have already solved in their head, but still have to deal with in real life. She said, "What do you need, Cain?" Not what did you do, not how could you. What do you need? He opened his mouth, closed it. Something moved through his face that was not quite what she had expected to see there. He told her the truth, the refused ceremonies, the hunting failures, the pups, the thing Elder Mara had said about the fire. He did not ask her to come back. He started to, twice, and both times his mouth stopped working before the sentence finished. What came out instead, after a long silence, was, "I made a wrong calculation." Seraphine was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You did not miscalculate, Cain. You knew what you were choosing. You made a choice with full information, and you chose it anyway. That is different from a calculation error. The difference matters." He had nothing to say to that. She did not help him find something. Before Cain found the words he owed her, before Seraphine had decided what she was going to do, the pack arrived. Not because Cain sent them. He had not. They came the way wolves come when something old and instinctive moves through them and ignores the instructions of whoever happens to be in charge. Elder Mara arrived first, with 3 traveling bags and a pot large enough to feed 20 people. She walked into Seraphine's barn like she had been there before, set the pot on the fire, and began cooking without asking permission. The maternal females came the next morning, then 6 of the senior warriors, then, steadily over 2 days, the people who had stepped back at the refused ceremonies, the ones who had looked at the ground, who had walked out quietly, who had made their choice without making a speech about it. They sat in her barn, they ate her food, they told her about the pups sleeping badly, and the coordination falling apart, and the thin, restless feeling that had been living in the pack since the night she left. They did not ask her to come back. They did not perform helplessness for her benefit. They simply came and sat and let her see what her absence had cost them, which was a more devastating thing than any speech could have been. Seraphine served them all food and listened to everything and said very little. When everyone was settled and Cain was standing at the back of the barn, looking like a man who had learned something about himself that he would have preferred not to know, Seraphine spoke. She addressed the elders, the warriors, the maternal females, and Cain in exactly the same tone, because she had decided some time ago that she was not going to give any one of them special treatment. She said that if she returned, one thing had to change. The Luna position needed to be written into the pack charter as an independent seat, not appointed by the Alpha, recognized by the pack, accountable to the pack. If an Alpha broke the bond again without the collective's agreement, the Luna would not be the one to leave. The matter would go before the full pack council. The elders looked at each other. The warriors looked at Cain. Cain's jaw was very tight. He was doing the thing he did when he was processing something that had caught him unprepared. Perfectly still, perfectly silent, taking it in. Elder Mara, very softly said, "She is not wrong." Cain said yes. He said it the way he said yes to things that required him to give up something he had been holding tightly, plainly without theater, with the full weight of the word and no decoration around it. After the elders had stepped outside, and it was just the 2 of them in the yard behind the barn, with the mud of Veyrath's edge under their feet and the sound of someone's wolf pup making noise in the distance, Cain told her the rest. Not all of it came out smoothly. He was not a man who had practiced this kind of speaking. He told her he had not slept properly in 6 weeks. He told her the great hall felt wrong, and he had stopped going in because he kept looking for her in the room. He told her that the morning after the exile, he had stood at the council table for 11 minutes before realizing he was waiting for her to arrive and give him her read on the Eastern Border Report, which she always did, which he had never once acknowledged that he relied on. He did not say love. He was building toward language he did not yet have, and she could see the construction in progress, and she let it be in progress. She said, "You have a lot of work to do, Cain." He said, "I know." She said, "Do not make me regret this." He said, "I won't." She believed him, not because he had earned it yet, but because she knew the difference between a man who was saying what sounded good and a man who was saying the only thing he had left, and this was the second kind. 6 months later, Veyrath was different in small, steady ways. The hunting coordination came back first. Then the pups started sleeping. The stress fractures in the communal bond closed slowly, the way wounds close when the source of injury is removed and the body is finally allowed to heal. The pack charter had been amended. The Luna seat was written in, independent and recognized, in language that 3 elders and Seraphine had spent 2 weeks getting exactly right. Cain Ashveil had not become easy. He was still the man he was, commanding, quiet in the way that meant something was always turning over behind his eyes, certain of himself in rooms where certainty was required, and careful with it everywhere else. He was still the Alpha King, and that did not have a soft version. But the pack noticed things. They noticed that every morning, before Seraphine was fully awake, there was cedar tea on the table in her study. Cedar, specifically, because it was what she drank and not what Cain drank, and someone had paid attention to that detail at some point. They noticed that in every room, every gathering, every council meeting and pack ceremony, Cain stood slightly closer to Seraphine than the situation required. Not touching, not performing anything for anyone, just close. The way a person stands near something they came very close to losing and have not yet finished being careful with. The pack noticed all of this. The pack said nothing about it. They didn't need to. They already knew.